What's good, everybody? I want to welcome you to my channel. I am Coach Farrell. I primarily make content coach with spiritual life coaching in mind for the LGBTQ community. A little bit about me. I'm Coach Farrell again. I am the creator of the 6A Gateway, which in this video we are going to talk about the awareness stage of the 6A's to the gateway to what? The gateway to your God power activated. We basically trying to get back to authenticity. In the previous video, I talked about authenticity. That's the first stage in the 6A gateway, where you would just naturally yourself. And this particular stage is awareness. So we're going to talk about awareness today when people typically make you aware that you are different, that you are somehow wrong, and all these things around you just being your authentic self. All right, so a little bit about me. Again, Coach Farrell, creator of the 6A Gateway. This is not something I just studied or read about. I have lived it personally, been through it all. Rejection, identity struggles, gang banging, victim mentality. For 20 years, I did identify as a lesbian, and then I discovered that, you know what, I'm trans. I've been identifying more with male stuff all these years. Let me just be real about that. Self-awareness, partnering with spirit. I stopped living for survival. I started living in alignment. Now I'm married. I'm raising two kids. Got two kids. I'm a CPA. Used to think that, these things couldn't happen for somebody like me, but I like to help other people come to the revelation that it very well can, and it will, if you just, remove all the trauma, the religious dogma, and get back to your authenticity. We want to get back to your 3P position, or develop that 3P position where your passion, purpose, and prosperity all converge on this one sweet spot of your purpose and who you were sent here or spirit deposited in you to be. So if you're ready to stop hiding and start becoming, then you are in the right place. All right. So let's get into this awareness stage. Again, I want to reiterate before we get started that not everybody in the LGBT community may have experienced every stage. So keep that in mind if something doesn't resonate or doesn't ring true for you. You can be in more than one stage at a time, depending on who you're around. You may be in one stage or another, depending on the extent of what they know about you and your LGBT journey. So there's that as well. And then there's stages. There are no lines of demarcation, so you kind of flow throughout the stages. Like I said, you can be in more than one stage. So although some of the imagery may have those lines, in reality, there are no lines of demarcation or strict boundaries. You just kind of it's all kind of fluid. And you're just flowing through it. All right. So let's start talking about awareness. Now, what is awareness? It is that when it comes to a point where your authenticity is no longer innocent. At some point, you become aware that the way you naturally exist is being observed, you're being categorized, you're being corrected, you're being questioned, you are being, warned. This awareness stage is so much depth in it. I could go on and on because this is a lot of times where the trauma is introduced. This is where you may experience emotional abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse. Uh, Unfortunately, some people sexual abuse once they see you being too feminine if you're a boy or too masculine if you're a girl, and people may respond to it in an incorrect way. Adults may take advantage. There may be some grooming going on. I know that some people seem to have that stories, particularly around religious organizations and churches and things, where they were groomed and taken advantage of because of how they presented. People thought that they were, making an ask for something that they could then exploit, and the adult could exploit about, that child or that young person. So that's where a lot of the trauma comes from in this awareness stage. Um, you begin studying the environment around you to determine one thing: is it safe for me to be myself here? And I think most of us come to the conclusion that it's not, because of the abuse that we've endured just from being ourselves. Stop doing that. Why are you being like that? I've been told you about that. You better stop doing it. And, it intensifies. First, it's kind of just those, little side comments or remarks. But as you continue to be authentic around certain people, and typically these are people who do wield some kind of control over your life. They may be a parent or a guardian or a religious figure or teacher or an older sibling or a friend, just somebody you hold in high regard, and you want their approval, you want to be safe in their presence. You don't have the means outside of them that may be providing for you to do for yourself. So you want to conform to what they deem appropriate as a means of your own survival. One, so you have what you need if they're providing your needs, but two, so that you are no longer subjugated to that abuse. So, it intensifies into abuse if you continue to be too authentic. So you start to scale back, you start to adjust, and you wear those masks, that help you survive. You start to learn what those people find like what they find approving, what they find acceptable behavior, acceptable ways to be, and you model that based on maybe what other people are able to do to get that approval from them. And so you model after them so that you can be safe and you can get approval or get love and be affirmed too in those spaces. So a lot of times it becomes about survival. Again, you wear a mask, whether it be a shiesty or Ace Ventura was not Ace Ventura. What's his real name? Jim Carrey did a movie, The Mask. I don't know what kind of mask, a Halloween mask, but you put on some covering, that leads to some self erasure, some erasure of the authentic you, as a means of survival. And again, we trying to get back to authenticity. That's the goal. The ultimate goal here is to get back to that authenticity. But some of these stages that we've been through have kind of erased that. So we've got to recalibrate and readjust and heal the trauma and heal the things that pushed us away from who we really were and what we were sent here to do, so we can get back to and establish 3P and fulfill our purpose. Okay. So, especially if you're a black queer person raised in a religious, hypermasculine, or rigid or emotionally unsafe system, this stage is where your survival begins, which is what I've already kind of touched on. You just, especially hypermasculine or religious, you just learn how to adapt so that you're not ridiculed. Some personal anecdotes and stuff. My mom had her good friend is a pastor, and she's a woman pastor, so there was already she was already experiencing some pushback of her own about her being called to preach, because some people believe that the Bible says that women are supposed to preach. But at any rate, she was a pastor and she had, quite a few opinions on being LGBT. And, this is when I was a young person. So I held her in high regard. I still do. And so her opinion, and being that she was a clergy and all that, I'll hold her opinion in high regard, and her outlook on, her interpretation of the Bible, what God says, all of that mattered to me. So I remember her being at the house and her saying, God wouldn't make nobody like that. God wouldn't make nobody gay. And the older me can look back and see that that conversation may not have been as happenstance or um, coincidental as it seemed on the surface when I was 11 or 12. It seemed like, oh, we talking about this, and I don't know where it came from. But the older me realizes that maybe there were some side conversations about my authenticity that led to her then being sure to bring that up in my presence, because they were, this is another way in which awareness happens. They dropping these breadcrumbs, dropping these hints to try to steer you in another direction, and you end up being steered into some of the masking is all it really creates, because I am who I am, and that can't necessarily be changed or altered or anything like that. So what you end up doing is wearing a mask, because I'm like, oh God, well, if you didn't make me like this, then I really got to figure this out in my young mind. And I can remember praying like either that night or shortly thereafter, on my knees, at my bedside, like that kind of traditional pose, head bowed, hands clasped, eyes closed, like, God, if this is not of you, then take it from me or help me figure it out, because that's how deep I was in awareness of all the little hints and things around me that being that way was not right. And like I say, the adult me can see that I don't think those conversations were accidental or coincidental. I think they were very deliberate toward trying to push me or persuade me to not be so boyish or whatever the case may be. Um, so that's a little bit about awareness from my perspective. So it looks like paying attention. And again, I'm paying attention. I'm hearing the adults around me. How do they respond to LGBT people? Are they making jokes? Are they being derogatory? It was said that if you like that, you can't stay in my house. You can't, I ain't raising nobody like that. You got to go do that somewhere else. These are the things that I'm hearing as a young person. And again, the adult me sees that it wasn't so accidental. It may have been very much deliberate, out of fear of, who I was showing up as in authenticity. But all of that was shaping me. I don't have money, I don't have a car, I don't have a house of my own, so I need to conform. I need to wear a mask so that I can navigate this space and be safe. Was the message I was getting. So that's a lot of what awareness can be about. Um, the jokes. I'm sorry, sad to say, but there was a girl in high school, in my high school, that was like she came out as bi, and even that was a big deal back then. This is 2001, 2002. Again, I'm in my early 40s, so back then it just wasn't a lot of people doing that in my environment. So seeing how people reacted to her, it was funny. It was she had a little nickname. I think a movie came out called High School High back then. And they can Google it. But the joke was she was high school high bi, because she was bisexual. I'm not proud to have participated in things like that, especially knowing my own truth. But that's sometimes what LGBT people do when they closeted or haven't quite figured out for themselves what this looks like for themselves, and living in the truth of it. You laugh at the jokes, or you participate with the jokes and stuff, because, and even some LGBT allies have this conflict. It's like if I stick up for gay people too much, or if I hang around, people like that too much, people may start thinking that I'm that, and I'm trying to throw people off the scent because I am that. Or in an ally's case, they just don't want to be affiliated because it's like I don't want people to think I'm gay. Like I don't have no problem with gay people, but I don't want to be perceived as that. So that keeps people from showing up and being an ally for gay people. But like I say, in my case, it was more so about throwing people off, and I've seen that too. I hopped in one guy's DMs about it, which I mean, maybe in hindsight, that wasn't the right thing to do, being that I have done some of that kind of stuff myself when figuring out myself. But I just didn't like the deliberate, intentional, like going out of your way to condemn or joke about gay people when you clearly fit the bill. So at any rate, sometimes all that kind of stuff plays a part as well in the awareness stage. Is trying to throw people off because you see society's reaction to gay, and you don't want that reaction heaped upon you. So you may begin hearing comments directed at you. Why you acting like that? It's just really pointing out your authenticity. Basically, that's gay. I was standing behind one of my family members, and I'm really still covering and trying to protect people at the same time, help people and be transparent about my experience. But in the course, I'll go deeper. I'll be a little more transparent than I am out here on like a main platform like YouTube. But yeah, I was just standing over their shoulder looking at something, and it was like, "You gay? Like, why you so up on me?" And I'm like, "Well, I was just trying to see, the thing you were looking at." Like, but because of my authenticity and the way I was showing up in other areas, then that moment could not have just been me just trying to see the thing. It became you doing something gay because we already think you gay because of how you show up. So just stuff like that. Let's see whether it's subtle or direct, those moments begin teaching you that your authenticity may come with consequences. So I learned that again very early on, um, that it may come with a consequence. It feels tense. You're hyper aware. You are watchful. Gather information constantly, even if you don't fully realize it yet. You start trying to predict, who feels safe. I talked about the authenticity angels. By the time I really was coming into authenticity as a teenager or a preteen, we had moved away. My godmother used to live on the next street. In the authenticity video, I talk about my authenticity angel, one of which being my godmother. Well, she lived on the next street over. So when we move away and I'm a preteen, I no longer have that anchor. I no longer have that angel to help protect me and guide me as I try to figure this out. So now I'm back at square one trying to establish who or what feels safe. And my mom used to always joke how I was always up in my room. And, first of all, I think teenagers, sometimes you just be holed up in your room in your own little world doing your own thing. I don't think that's unique to me. But for me, that was my escape. That was my safe space where I could, in my head, be whoever I wanted to be. I could play all the boy music, the rap music, all the boy bands, boy groups, the Jodeci, the Drew Hill, Jagged Edge, Silk. Like I could play all those guys. As yet, I'm 40. Y'all probably have no idea who As Yet is, but the As Yets and the Joe and all those kind of people. I could like become them and sing to my love interest, or in my mind, in my imagination, and and I'll talk about that. That kind of leads into the adventure stage where you kind of explore or look for those outlets for your authenticity. So not to get ahead of myself, but just the point is just trying to find safe spaces for my authenticity to live, because now I'm aware that everywhere is not safe for my authenticity. So you start to think, who's going to reject me when I hear comments like I can't live like that and live in this house, or I'd have to go somewhere else with that. Like it really plays on your psyche. Like I've really got to figure this out. I either have to conform, or I gotta figure out how to make some money so I can go live my life. You really start to think more like that. Who would still love me if they knew, or who would disown me, or whatever the case may be. So you start to think, who can I trust? Who loves me unconditionally, regardless of this thing? They still gonna love and embrace me. So 3 signs you are in the stage of awareness. You constantly scan your environments for safety. You pay attention to how people talk about LGBTQ people, even when the conversation has nothing to do with you directly. Again, hearing my mom's friend talk about God not gonna make you like that, or hearing people say how you wouldn't be welcome, or hearing the jokes. Like, you pay attention, you cue in on it, because these are people that I love and care about. I value their opinion. I depend on them. They they have authority over me. So yes, I value, and it matters how they feel about that, because I may be that as I'm discovering in myself. And so how are they going to react to that? What's going to happen to me? Again, this is about survival and safety and awareness. So you are hyper vigilant in those ways. You study reactions, tones, jokes, sermons, politics, body language, social dynamics to determine how safe honesty would actually be in those environments. So um, yeah. And then this is a big one. Number 2, you begin editing yourself to avoid negative reactions. So you may lower your voice. You may speak higher. You may change your mannerisms. You gotta be more manly if you're, a dude. You gotta be more feminine if you're a girl. Like, I went as far as to perm my hair at one point. I wore my hair natural from the day I was born up until I was like 16, 17 years old. But I used to play basketball, so I used to sweat a lot. And anybody knows that if you just get your hair straight and like just heat, no chemical, that once it gets wet, it's gonna start poofing up or whatever. We call it going back. Your hair gonna go back. Like go back to natural. I guess was the was the sentiment with go back. So I ain't want, my hair was always going back. So I used to get a lot of criticism for that, and especially I mentioned in the previous video I have a twin, so it was always like, well, her hair don't go back, and she's with her hair down and all that kind of stuff, and you don't, because I would always pull mine up or pull it back because it would go back, and now I have to try to tame it, and so I would get a bad rap for that, and so in a attempt to combat that, I got a perm, because it was like, well, based on what the people around me were saying about a perm, it's permanent, like, you can sweat, and or you could just wash it and just blow dry it or whatever, and it's gonna still be straight. You're gonna be able to do whatever you need to do with it. So I thought that was the remedy, or that was the answer. But here again, this is me wearing a shiesty. This is me wearing a mask. This is me erasing myself. Like, wearing a mask leads to self erasure. And so this was me trying to cope in this environment by compromising who I am. I didn't want no perm. I don't want that stuff burning my head. I told y'all, in authenticity, I wanted braids like Snoop. Like, I was good with that. And I did used to get my hair braided at one point when I was playing basketball. But again, it just led to so much scrutiny and critiques, and that awareness. People just pointing out as if your authenticity, something's wrong with it. That I eventually just get caved in and said, okay, well, let's try this perm thing. Um, I give you another quick example. I One day I had, it was like beginning of school, like back to school. So I got some polo boots for back to school. Again, y'all, I'm early 40s, so this like the late 90s. The polo boots was the style. This was the whole style. I'll walk you through it. I had on the polo boots with some, some starchy khaki pants, a brown braided belt, and a polo shirt. That was the style. Y'all know I was the stylist. You got to give me that for the late 90s. I was looking good. At least in Texas, that's how we did it. So I go into science class, and this dude in the class was like, I'm feeling like $1,000,000. Granted, I feel great. I feel good. I look good. I know I look good. I know I'm on my note. Like this is what I wanted to look like. I walk in class, head held high. Sauntering in there. Got my book, my science book. I'm ready. Let's get it. Dude looks at me and says, "You look like a boy," but he said it in such a derogatory way, and it was like, kind of deflating, because it's like I walk in on cloud nine, and then it's like a boy. Like, what you mean? Um, so it was like, well, damn, that's not really the reaction I was looking for. I just, because especially like if you're saying it like it's a bad thing, like I just really want to look like me and be accepted. But my friend groups and my twin and them, they went get into boys and stuff like that. So trying to keep up with that, it was kind of like, okay, well, I need to rethink this, because that same dude eventually became like my boyfriend or whatever. Because again, I'm trying to fit in. So yes, I like 2 or 3 days later, I still had on my polo boots, but this time I like had put a skirt on. I had put like a little t-shirt on. Like I was trying to feminize it a little bit. Like, so that goes back to the editing yourself, erasing who you authentically would show up as a means to conform, as a means to fit into what other people are expecting of you, and to have belonging and be accepted in these circles. Like with like say my twin and our other friends and stuff, it was like, you know I felt like I gotta be on par with them. So okay, I gotta get me a boyfriend or whatever. Or I gotta wear the skirt. I gotta be more girly. So that's another example of wearing a mask, and just really, avoiding, and not avoiding, but well, yeah, avoiding negative reactions by giving people what they wanted from me instead of being me. And I also want to share one more example of that from, let's see, Glorilla's sister, Brorilla, is the stud. And I let y'all hear it in her own words, and then we'll kind of dissect why this is awareness.
Yeah, talking about the sucking dick part and shit like that.
Let me play it back.
Y'all going too far with this skin and bone shit, y'all. Yeah, talking about the sucking dick part and shit like that. That was a one-time thing. That was a one-time thing. Because my mama used to beat the shit out of me and accept me as gay, accept me when I was gay. There was a one. I was still in the closet. I was 17. Some of y'all dykes got kids. Don't come for me.
All right. So hopefully you get the point there. Basically, she had done a interview with Skin and Bones, and in that interview, she did admit to having, slubbed a knob or whatever once. But you could, and so people been giving her flack for it in her comments, and a lot of people try to police what makes somebody a stud, or what make you really gay, or you did this or that, then you disqualified. But I would say let's stop trying to police other people's experience. To me, that's colonizer energy, trying to be the authority on what makes somebody this or that, and labels, restrict and limit anyway. So let people be them, and furthermore, and especially in her case, she was doing it as a means of survival. You hear her say there that she was doing it because she used to get beat because she was gay. So that's that trauma. That's that awareness stage where you are experiencing the abuse. I remember I said emotional, physical, mental, sometimes sexual abuse for just being who you are. In her case, you see, it was the physical abuse for being gay. So what does she do? You put the mask on and you try to conform. You try to do what other people or your peers, other girls your age are doing, which was, slobbing the knob or whatever. So um, that's that justifies, and not that you need justification, but that explains why she was doing what she was doing at the time. And so, I've heard people say, well, she not a real stud or whatever, but again, you can't dictate somebody else's experience for them. We all do what we have to do sometimes for survival. Am I not a real trans man? Or, well, I wasn't a real stud because I had a perm, or because I used to wear skirts in high school. We've all, to some extent, maybe had to wear that mask and had to survive. So I don't think anybody's in any position to judge and or try to police or be the authority on anybody else's experience. You are who you feel that you are, who your authenticity says that you are, point blank period. And I think everybody needs to respect whatever somebody says they are and how they identify, because don't nobody know that better than that person. All right, so I'm off my soapbox about that, but yes, this was awareness because it was a means of survival in an environment where being gay was not acceptable. And that is really at the core of awareness. Now, had she been like, well, yeah, I did it to see if I liked it because I didn't know if I like girls, if I like boys, that would be more the adventure stage, which is the next stage. But since her motivation for doing it was because of the abuse, or trying to prevent the abuse, then that puts it in awareness. All right. So let's see, because I got one more illustration for it. But I've given you some anecdotes on that as well, as far as the editing yourself, the self erasure, wearing the mask. Was one of the ways. The other way, in case you forgot, was constantly scan your environment for safety, trying to see how other people respond to gay people and stuff like that, to know, am I safe? Do I need to just really lay low here, or whatever the case may be? Oh yeah, and then I mean, I have so many examples pretty much in every stage. I've lived through all of these, so I don't want to belabor the point. But I remember when I was in like fourth grade, I was like 10 years old, and I used to play football at recess with the guys, and I was pretty good. I'd be juking them and everything, and just I bow them, hit them, whatever. Like I was fast, so I was doing my thing. But I remember the girls, like we didn't always all have recess at the same time. But this particular day, some of the girls that I admired, thought were cool or whatever, were outside. So I started really just being stupid about football. Like the ball would come to me and I would like throw it up in the air and scream, and like I don't know, trying to do like what I thought a girl would do, like like kind of shit. And then I overhear one of my friends, one of my guy friends, like, "Hey man, don't pass the ball to Farrell no more." And I was like, dang, like, I'm fumbling for real, like literally, because now they don't even want to pass me the ball because I'm out here being silly, because I'm putting the mask on and trying to fit in instead of being out here doing me and getting busy on this football field. So that went on like that day of recess. I didn't get the ball no more, which rightly so, because I'm the one that's tripping. But like a few days later, I got the ball and I did my thing. I said enough of that. Like you don't pass it to me no more. Like that ignited something in me where I was like, oh nah, fuck that. I went back to authenticity and I went for mine. So that's just another way in which I've been doing this a long time and been, you know, for lack of a better word, code switching and switching it up, just trying to, mask up and trying to survive in various environments. But I always go back to authenticity because that's the goal. That's the goal anyway. The third way you know you're in awareness is you start internalizing the fear attached to authenticity. So the more you hear the negative messaging about LGBTQ people, the more difficult it becomes to separate their fear from your identity. You may begin feeling shame around things that once felt natural. And this is often where trauma becomes introduced or intensified through the emotional rejection, the ridicule, spiritual manipulation, physical punishment, isolation, or conditional love. Conditional love being a big one, at least for me, because again, having a twin, and when she would be, come downstairs looking all girly and all that, and the praise she would get heaped upon her, and the encouragement, the admiration, and then I would just be standing there as if I wasn't even there. So it was conditional love in my opinion, in my assertion, and it taught me very early on that okay, I've got to figure out what makes these people tick. I've got to figure out what I have to do to get their approval, to get them to look at me that way, because the natural, authentic me doesn't get that kind of response. So you start to be conditioned in various ways, and like I say, very early on. Like I say, my earliest memories of kind of coping and switching started about maybe 7, 8 years old. Again, I'll share other stories, maybe a little more detailed, more intimate, may name names and stuff. But Not that the names are important, but to really drive home, the personal aspects of it and the magnitude of the people around me where I'm trying to establish where am I safe. Okay, so as one other video I want to share, this one's heavy as far as the abuse goes. I know I'm kind of skipping around with the videos and going back to some of the lesson around this. But hopefully it all is kind of is there's a cohesion and it's all coming together as far as the point of what awareness is and the effects of it and how people respond to it as far as how they're trying to cope and survive. So this one is Billy Porter. I won't play the whole video because there's a song in it that is not cleared on my end for me to play. Um, but I do want to play at least the first part, and we'll discuss after.
My family, I was 5 years old and can barely comprehend thought. Um, my family was nervous that I was too much of a sissy and I was sent to a psychologist.
So I'm gonna stop right there. You can see he says he's 5 years old. His family is nervous. He's too much of a sissy. That's authenticity. That's him just being him. They're interpreting it as, oh, you're a sissy. They're putting a name to it prior to him even conceptualizing what it could be or anything. Just being himself, and so they are pushing him or have entered him into awareness with that kind of language and with the introduction of the psychologist at that point. So I just want to point that out.
Every day after kindergarten for a year. My mannerisms at 5 years old were not what they were supposed to be.
See, authenticity. I'm sorry to keep pausing it, but I just want to drive home that this framework and these stages are true to the experience of a lot of LGBT people, myself included.
So the messaging is something's wrong with you and you need to be fixed immediately.
Something's wrong with you. That's awareness. The messaging. You hear him say the messaging. That puts you in the awareness stage because that puts you in the mind frame and isn't like an awakening. Like, oh, I didn't know something was wrong with me. I was just being myself. But they put you in this awareness of it by pointing it out. And that's what that messaging conveys when they see you to a therapist or when they tell you, hey, stop doing this, stop acting like that, you need to do this. Or, they drop the little subtleties and about, I don't, that gay stuff, I ain't with it. They're really talking to you because they feel like they fear and they feel that you are LGBT and they don't want to see it, either from social pressure, religious pressure, whatever the motivation. Those of us who were subjected to people who felt that strongly have likely endured some of these things. And again, I meant to say this at the beginning, but I don't think I did. Uh, Everybody may not experience every stage. So if this one doesn't relate, or if this authenticity you can't relate to it, doesn't register, that's okay. Like I said, if you typically authenticity is for those of us who are stereotypically gay. Like you a man that's kind of more feminine, you a girl that's kind of more, boyish or sturdy, or excuse me, kind of more burly, kind of more dykish, whatever you want to say. We typically can attest to the authenticity and then that awareness that derives from the authenticity. And like I said in the authenticity video, awareness and authenticity really go hand in hand. It's hard to talk about one without the other because of the overlap. And so you'll notice, even just like in authenticity, I did touch on awareness. In awareness, I'm also touching on authenticity because I almost did one video of them together, but I didn't want it to be too long, so I chopped it up. But you can see that there's still that overlap. So I just wanted to point out here, you see authenticity and awareness in what he's describing right now. So yeah, you may not know the authenticity phase, that's okay, but you may know the awareness phase. And even if it's just a personal awareness, because if you don't have the authenticity piece, there may not be a lot of people pointing out that you're different or that, you need to do things differently or anything like that because there's no outward signs. But you may have internal signs of this awareness of that, hey, I'm attracted to the same gender or whatever the case may be. So you probably have a personal awakening. I'm interested actually to hear from people who are not stereotypically, outwardly LGBT or whatever, those cues we sometimes look for, or as LGBT people. And I know I'm way off. I'm gonna get back to the video, I promise. But as LGBT people, we have gaydar, and I think gaydar is kind of synonymous in some ways with awareness stage, because it's like, I see you, and I can, even whether you are kind of outwardly stereotypically, and I know you don't have to fit every stereotype to be anything, so I'm not trying to get caught up on that or say that that's the case, but even if you're not stereotypically what we deem gay or whatever, or LGBT or whatever, um, the gaydar typically don't miss. At least mine doesn't. Like I can see it in that person. I wouldn't be surprised, kind of thing sometimes with people. And that's not even to judge them or label them. I'm just speaking truth. That sometimes the awareness can come from those of us who know, like they say, like a fisherman knows another fisherman, like from across the pond or whatever. Like you just know when you know. So the awareness, I say all that to say, for some of you, the awareness may not come as a result of authenticity. However, it may come from just your internal feelings of attraction, or things that you're working through internally, or it may come from somebody who just know, who can clock it, from their own, but typically from their own experience in it also. Okay, so let's get back to this though. We're going through awareness, authenticity, and awareness, kind of bouncing back and forth as he tells his story.
Immediately, you need to be fixed. 5 years old. After this year of evaluation, the nice psychologist, doctor, white man, he said to my mom, "Oh, Billy's fine. He's fine. Maybe you should just get a man around the house, teach him to be more of a man." Within a year, my mother had met and married my stepfather, who proceeded to molest me from the time I was 7 to the time I was 12. The psychologist said, "Get a man around the house to teach you to be more of a man." That's 5. By 7, the man that my mother found was giving me my man lessons, right? That's what a 5-year-old thinks. When you say that in front of a child, that's what I thought. Oh, these are my man lessons.
Okay, it's heavy. It's hard to watch. Um, the empath in me just kind of struggles, not to make it about me, but I feel for him in that experience. Uh, so so here we see the sexual abuse and trauma as a result of the awareness stage, illustrated and recounted in that story. Um, just like with Brorilla, we see, or Scarface, she also goes by. We see the physical abuse aspect. I've endured some abuse of my own. Again, I just kind of keep it um, surface here, but we'll go into more detail, maybe in more of a private forum, as far as what some of that looks like. But trust and believe, I know what it's like, and it does lead to trauma. That you go in later stages, you may find yourself acting out, and so these are the things that we have to address and deal with and remedy in our lives. So I did just want to illustrate that and wanted you to hear firsthand from some LGBT people what the authenticity versus the awareness and that coping, that from the authenticity to that realization, and then what they do to cope looks like, based on the abuse, based on the response that they're getting to their authenticity, which is at the core of what awareness is about. Okay, so I stopped it there because again, I don't have clearance to play. There's a song linked to it, but you can go to Billy Porter's page if you want to hear the rest of the video, hear the rest of his testimony. But basically, he says he won't go back to church or these institutions that try to tell him that his humanity is wrong, which is kind of what we all kind of arrive at too. Is like, I'm not doing it, because once I bought into that, it really led to my own trauma and suffering, trying to be something that I'm not, trying to wear these masks, and then I'm still not enough because the leopard is not changing its spots. Like, I am who I am, and I was meant to be who I am. So that authenticity always rears its head. It always comes back out, and then you always back into being called back into awareness. And like I say, that calling back though intensifies over time, and it gets more hurtful and more injurious, more trauma induced, because the abuse starts to take shape. It may start out as just light or subtle criticism, or even if it's um, overt criticism. But over time, the authenticity, you just can't help it. You just keep going back to who you are, and it intensifies that response. It manifests as abuse a lot of times. That anger, that fear of who you may be and be becoming, is totally at odds with who they believe you're supposed to be, or who they thought you would be. And so the way it manifests in their behavior towards you is very injurious. So I just really wanted to highlight that here and drive that point home. So to round this out, we went through like the three stages or signs that you are in this particular stage. There's three signs you're in the stage. But to the coaching, again, I am Coach Farrell. This is the framework that I created around this so that we can work through this to get to the 3P, where passion, purpose, prosperity all converge, that sweet spot of who you are here to be, who you were meant to be, who you're meant to serve. Okay, so this is one of the biggest reasons I created it, because, like I say, this awareness stage is very heavy. It's where a lot of the trauma is introduced, and it's a lot of what the work that we have to do in my coaching centers around what happens in this stage. We were taught survival before we were taught self-trust a lot of times, trusting who we are and that we're okay. And the authenticity angels I touched on in the first video, what happens when they're no longer around and stuff. So you really have to figure out how to navigate, or if you don't have any authenticity angels, how do you navigate in awareness? So we learn how to read the room, how to monitor ourselves. So you're hyper vigilant, and even if you're at the intersection of being an LGBT and black, like, you're really hyper vigilant as a black person. As an LGBT person is, you know, um, you don't get a break. There's always this hyper vigilance around your survival and your safety, or it can be at times, which is why we seek out those safe spaces, and we'll explore that more in adventure. So you learn how to shape shift emotionally, spiritually, socially, even physically, in order to remain acceptable inside systems that were never designed to fully affirm us. Like I said, you shape shift physically. Like, I got a perm. I was wearing a skirt after I was told I looked like a boy when I had my khakis on. You start to adapt. I got plenty of other stories, but I'll share more later. So my coaching helps identify the masks they created for survival without shaming themselves for needing them in the first place. Goes back to what I was saying about Brorilla. There is no shame around the mask you had to wear. The fact that you did try out, um, uh, you tried out the fellatio or what have you, as a means of your own survival, as a means of trying to prove, hey, I belong here, hey, I fit in here. I think it's part of our code as human beings. Belonging is a part of it, that we meant for survival. Back when more primitive man, early man, you had to run in packs or in groups for your survival, because one person could be looking to the east while you look west and looking for danger or what have you. It was dangerous to be by yourself. And so a lot of those primitive things don't leave us, even in a modern society. We still wired a certain way for, community and belonging. And so everybody wants that. And it's a lonely place when you don't have it. So don't let nobody make you feel shame for what you had to do in survival and the masks you may have worn for your survival, at the hands of any type of abuse. So, so that's the goal here. We're not shaming. We're supporting each other. We're working through and healing the trauma in this stage, to get to 3P. Because the goal, not to judge the version of you that survived. The goal is to help you reconnect with the version of you that no longer has to. Again, we want to get back to authenticity. The version of you that does not have to just survive, but that thrives, that fulfills their purpose here, without giving a damn what anybody say or how they feel about it. We've overcome that, and we will continue to throughout this coaching. It will be the goal. All right. So if this one resonated with you, I want you to please leave me a comment. Tell me about some stories of your awareness. I'd love to hear from people who may not have had the authenticity phase as much, but had like personal instances of awareness and coming into, dang, I'm different. Like I would love to hear firsthand how that went for some of you. Please share. Please, either you can email me, like I say, leave a comment under the video. I would encourage everybody to take the 6A to GPA, the 6A gateway. It's a tongue twister. I don't know why I did that to myself. The 6A, but it has meaning though. That's why I did it. The 6A gateway. Gateway to what? Gateway to your God power activated. We are activating our God power, that we are realigning with the divine and what we were here to do, what we are here to do, our purpose, the God in us. We no longer shrinking. We showing up bold. We showing up big. Our God power is activated. That's the goal. That's the point. So it's the 6A gateway to your God power activated. Take the quiz. See what stage you are currently in. You can't know where you're going. You first got to know where you at. I say, an analogy I used before. At the mall, you're looking at the mall map and you're trying to get over there to Gucci or Burberry or wherever, Zara, wherever. And you looking on the map and you find the store. But the very next thing you got to do is look for that circle that says you are here. Because I got to know where I am to know where I need to go in relation to where I am to get to said store, to get to Zara, to get to Burberry. I got to know where I am. So in order for us to get to GPA, our God power activated, we first have to know what stage we are in to know, do I need to make a left? Do I need to make a right? Do I go straight? Do I turn around and go back where I came from? So you got to know where you are to know where you want to go or figure out what you need to do to get where you want to go. So take the quiz so you can see where you are. And in that way, that would also connect you with this community so that, when we go deeper with this, again, this is all, believe it or not, still pretty surface. We go deeper. I can share more intimately to really help deliver people, help people have those revelations, help them heal. We're going to do all of that within the coursework. And that way you could be connected and you can know when those things are taking place. Okay? If this conversation, if it gave language to your experience, if you can relate to any of the videos played, any of my personal anecdotes, like I said, drop me a comment, like the video, share it with somebody, subscribe to the channel so you can be aware when these videos come out, going through all 6 stages right now. So you can be aware as that is happening. But definitely share it, pass it along. Let's build community around this and around this healing that needs to take place that we're trying to get through together. Um, what was I gonna say? Yeah, subscribe, share it. Yeah, share it because somebody else can resonate with the awareness as well, and it may speak to where they are right now. So let's shine a light on it and build community around it. This video is a lot longer than I intended for it to be, but hopefully it was well worth your time and really helped drive this point home. Again, this is one of the more in-depth, if not the most in-depth stage as far as some of the things that we have to correct and some of the things that make the most lasting impressions on us. Excuse me. So I spent a little more time here. But take the quiz, like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see y'all in the next video. I'm Coach Farrell, and I'm for real about spiritual truths that lead to enlightenment and ultimate freedom. Let's get it.